In this lecture, we will cover chapter 4 of your textbook, and it will be the tissue level of organization. And here you will learn a lot of new things, yeah? So all the review is done. Now you're going to start having all this new information. So let's start. So we're going to start defining what is a tissue, yeah? And then we will move to study the different tissue types, yeah? So we will describe what is an epithelial tissue, what is a connective tissue, a muscular tissue, and a nervous tissue. And these will be very general features. Later, to introduce the topic of the epithelial tissue that we will cover in more detail. We will describe what are cell junctions, that are proteins located between cells that work like cement, that allow them to attach to each other, that allows them to make barriers, that allows them to join to the basement membrane, and also that allows them to communicate. Then we will start having a more detailed definition of each one of the tissues, and we're going to start with the epithelial tissue, with this one, and we're going to talk about the functions that work as a barrier, that work covering each one of our body parts, each one of our organs, and then we will move into the different type of epithelia, and this will take a long time. The big picture that I want that you remember is that there are simple epithelial tissues, and we will cover all these different types, from the flat, the cuboidal, the columnar, and then we will talk about the stratified that have 2 or more cell layers. And here you also have other divisions, other different types. Okay, so let's start. So let's start with the first section of the class, and to do that, let's start with the learning outcomes that I want that you remember for this class. In your textbook, they describe 5 learning outcomes for chapter 4. The first one is that you should be able to learn about the various type of tissues and their origins. And if you're interested about understanding more the mechanisms of the origins of tissues, please, I encourage you to take the course of developmental biology. Second learning outcome is that you should be able to understand how cells of a tissue are held together, and you know that is through junctions. The third one, we're going to cover different tissues like epithelia, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue. And the idea that at the end of this class, you should be able to compare and contrast all these tissues. For the 4th learning outcome, you should be able to tell me the structure and the function of membranes. And finally, you should be able to understand how tissue is repaired. So why epithelia are able to repair so fast, while other tissues like the nervous system take much longer to repair. Okay, so let's start. To answer this question, what is a tissue? I'm going to show you these 4 diagrams that your textbook show you, and I want that you think about what are the similarities and the difference. So definitely each one of these have a similar function. Yeah? Each one of them have also our group of cells. This is the simplest definition of a tissue. But if you see, this cell is different from this one, and from this one, and from this one. So they have some similarities and some difference. Yeah. So what is a tissue? A tissue is a group of cells. This is the most simple definition. And this new piece of information is that a tissue have a common embryonic origin. In other words, we're going to talk later about germ layers. Yeah, so the initial layers during development that produce the other tissues, and there are 3: ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. So for example, all the epithelia will come from the ectoderm. Okay, so this is a way that you can define what is a tissue. All the epithelial cells are a group of cells that come from the ectoderm. Another way that you can define a tissue is because they function together to carry specialized functions. So, for example, if you see the nervous system, you have cells, you have neurons that all of us we know, but we have other cells there, a different type of neurons. Yeah, so you have, we're going to talk about some cells that cover the neurons to insulate the electrical pulses so they don't disappear. We will talk about other cells that are supporting the neurons, and they have different functions, but they work together as a tissue. And finally, as I said before, there are 4 types of tissues in our human body. In our animals, they could be different type of tissues. And in the following slides, I will show you that they are divided into groups according to their structure and their function. So, for example, the epithelia that you see here only a monolayer, a single layer. I will show you that some of them can make 2 or more layers. So we can divide it using that type of classification, and this will have, if you have multiple layers, is due to a reason, and they're located in a specific places. And the same thing we can talk about the muscles. You have muscles in your heart, you have smooth muscles, you have different type of muscles that we will cover during this lecture. Now I'm going to show you the 4 functions of this epithelium. So first function, if you think about the epithelia, they are everywhere, like in your skin. They are outlining your skin, they are working as a barrier, but not only they outline your skin, they outline each one of your organs, so they form covers. And if you see these yellow or orange cells, they are glands, so they can also form glands. Like in your skin, they can form oil glands, sebaceous glands, that they are able to moisturize and prevent dehydration in your skin. So very important. So the epithelial tissue outline, protect, cover, separate your skin and also each one of the organs, and it can also form gland. The connective tissue, and we will talk about that. There are so many types of the connective tissues that each one has a slightly different function. But when you think about connective tissue, I wonder you think why your skin don't separate from the muscles, yeah? So, when they're playing soccer, basketball, and you run, why your body doesn't fall apart? And the reason is because it has a glue that joins the epithelial tissue to the muscle, to the bones, to all the structure, and this is the connective tissue. The connective tissue works as a glue. So one of the functions that the connective tissue has is that it binds. Another function that it has is that it protects. You have in the extracellular matrix that we will cover there, the immune system is located there. It also works as a support, like in your bones, and I told you there was a lot of tissues involved, so there is a lot of function. For example, another type of connective tissue will be the blood, and in that case, it transport the nutrients of your body. So again, this connective tissue have multiple functions because it has a lot of variability. It can be the extracellular matrix that work more like a glue. It can be the blood. It can be the bones. But all of them have a common embryonic origin, as we said before. Okay, so we talked about epithelia, connective tissue. Now let's work about the 2 easiest one, that is the muscular tissue, that the function is pretty easy. They are involved in movement through contraction, and due to that contraction, they release heat. So they are also involved in the thermoregulation. And finally, the nervous tissue is involved in communicating signals, and we will cover this in more detail at the end of the semester. Now we're going to describe what is a junction, and to do that I want that you see this schematic from your textbook. You see that there is something here, there is something here, there is something here, there is something here. So there is different point of contacts between one cell here, another cell here, second cell, and another cell here, and even here with the basement membrane and the extracellular matrix. Yeah, so this one will be in contact here, this one will be in contact to this one and to this one, and also here and here. So what are the function of junctions? Junctions are multi-complex proteins. Yeah, so it's a bunch of proteins that are in charge of held together the cells in multiple ways, and we're going to cover how they're held together. And there are different types. Yeah, so we're going to cover at least 5 types of cell junctions. And if you're interested in this topic in cell biology, we'll cover it in much more detail. Now, I wanted to show you this schematic from my cell biology class, and you need to remember each one of the names that you find here. What I wanted to show you is that for this class, we're mainly going to say, okay, there are tight junctions that are located here in green that are represented with a circle. However, I told you that each one of these junctions is a multi-complex protein. So it's formed by different proteins that are interacting in one cell, in another cell, and they are together with with different chemical bonds. Yeah, and this is what produces all those things. So it's much more complex that I'm going to show you. If you take, for example, cancer biology, we will talk about these ones that are called focal adhesions, and that are very important to understand how cancer, the different mechanisms of how cancer invade other tissues. And now I'm just going to show you a brief video that summarizes the key information for this specific course about cell junctions.
Tissues are joined together by intercellular junctions that are located between the adjacent cells. Most types of epithelium and some types of muscular and nervous tissue contain intercellular junctions. There are 5 types of intercellular junctions: tight junctions, adherens junctions, desmosomes, hemidesmosomes, gap junctions. The tight junction is an area where the plasma membranes of adjacent cells are fused together. These junctions protect underlying tissues from harmful substances by restricting the movement of substances, like hydrochloric acid, in the spaces between cells. Tight junctions are found in tissues lining the surface of organs and body cavities, such as the stomach, intestines, and urinary bladder. Adherens junctions are created when transmembrane proteins, anchored to a dense plaque of proteins inside the cell, connect the adjacent cell membranes together. Additionally, microfilaments extend from the plaque into the cytosol of each cell. The dense adhesion belts help resist separation of epithelial tissues. The desmosome is similar in structure to the adherens junction, except that intermediate filaments extend into the cytosol of each cell. These junctions help provide stability to tissues and are abundantly found in the epidermis of the skin and between the muscle cells of the heart. The hemidesmosome, or half-desmosome, provides strong attachments between cells and other extracellular materials, such as the basement membrane of epithelial tissues. Hemidesmosomes are most abundant in tissues that undergo constant frictional or abrasive forces. The gap junction is an open communication channel. Transmembrane proteins, called connexons, join together to create tiny tunnels that form gaps between the adjacent membranes. Gap junctions allow ions and other small molecules to pass freely from one cell to another. Gap junctions also allow electrical impulses to pass rapidly from one cell to another. Gap junctions are particularly abundant in some types of muscle tissue.
The previous video, I think that it summarized perfectly the key information that you need to remember for the test. You can watch it as many times as you want. It's available in your textbook. Now I'm just going to go very rapidly, very fast over some key points that they could be in your test. Just so all the information that that it was in the video, I think it is great. I just want to remind you that, for example, for the test that junctions are areas of contact between adjacent cells. So here you can see here these adjacent cells that are in contact, and also you can have hemidesmosomes that are below, that they are also important, that are in contact with the basement membrane. In addition to that, those junctions are important for rapid communication between cells. So perfect example was the gap junctions that are found in the nervous system, and they send electrical signals. So the ions go through this path that are the gap junctions. And in addition to that, remember there are 5 types of cell junctions that we are going to study in this course. So I just wanted to show you, to remind you, where these are the 5 types of junctions: the tight junctions that you see here, the hearing junctions that you see here that are below the tight junctions, the desmosomes that are located even below the adhesion junctions, the hemidesmosomes that are located between the cell, epithelial cells in this case, and the basement membrane, and finally the gap junctions that are located here in the lateral region of the cells. So very quick, I'm going to give you key information about each one of these. So let's start with the tight junctions. So key information that you need to remember from the tight junction is that they prevent the movement of molecules across cell layers. This is very important, for example, in the stomach. Why? Because if on one of the enzymes or molecules leave the stomach, the pH of the stomach is very acidic, so you can kill or destroy our tissue. So what they do, they have these tight junctions that seal completely those structures. So for example, here what they are showing you is that if they put a solution here, yeah, the tight junctions are going to prevent that this solution goes to the other part of the tissue. And they did that experiment, and you can see that the dye is not able to cross. So remember, tight junctions leave no space between the plasma membranes of each cell, and this is very important to prevent the flow of ion, enzyme, or any molecule between cells. A more important thing that I didn't tell you is that they form a continuous belt. So although in the schematics I show you only that they are like this, yeah, just for a schematic purpose, they actually are surrounding the entire cell. And if you go to the back, they will form a belt. Because the cells are not only passed, the ions are not going to pass through here, but through every part in the cell, yeah, so all the surroundings. So you already know the information about the tight junction. Let's move now into a little bit below to the adhesion junctions. The key information that I want that you remember from the hearing junctions is that they work as a glue, as an adhesive between 2 cells. And those adhesion junctions, they are not working alone. They are not only a glue between cells, but if you see here, yeah, they have other proteins, and those proteins are cytoskeleton proteins. In this case, it will be actin, that it will communicate to the nucleus. So remember, you need to remember all the names of the protein, but they remember that those adhesion proteins are specialized for the function of creating this glue. So just to remind you, in the top you will find the tight junctions, in the epithelial, the hearing junction, and this in the desmosomes. And this, of course, is for humans, and they have similar configurations. So we already talked about the tight junctions, the adhesion junctions. Now we're going to talk about these ones that are the desmosomes that are located below. So key information that you need to know about the desmosomes. First, that the desmosome provide a strong adhesion. If you see the picture, they form like a button-like structure. They form these plaques that are very important, and they provide the tissue with structural integrity. So it is located in organs that have that are under a lot of mechanical pressure. So for example, they are abundant in the skin, yeah, so that they suffer a lot of they have to stand a lot of mechanical pressure. Your heart that is always pumping blood, that it has to shrink, and they shrink and grow all the time. And of course, in the uterus, in the neck of the uterus. Why? Because women, when they give birth, they need to have a strong contraction to deliver the baby. So remember, these are this structure, button-like structure, produces strong adhesion. So we finished these three that are in the lateral region of the cell. Now we're going to move to hemidesmosomes, that are the ones that are located below, yeah, close to the basement membrane. The key information about hemidesmosomes, you can get it first from the name. Hemi means half, and also from this structure, from this image. I mean, so while the desmosomes are proteins that look like buttons between two cells, the hemidesmosomes are only half. So you can see them here, and they look like a comb or like a stud. Yeah, and they are located not between cells, but this between the cell and here in blue you can see the basement membrane. And they are important. Also, they produce a strong support, but not between adjacent cells, but between the cells and the basement membrane. So this strong support is found in keratinocytes, that we will talk more in the following lecture when we talk about the integumentary system, so the skin, how it works. And in the skin, it is very important to attach the epithelia to the extracellular matrix, as is shown here. So remember, they look very similar to desmosomes when you study them using electron microscopy, but the main difference between those two is that the desmosomes are attaching to adjacent cells, while the hemidesmosome is only attaching the cell to the basement membrane. So we finish all these junctions, yeah, all these ones except the gap junction that is important, especially in the nervous system. The key information that I want that you remember from the gap junction is that it allows direct electrical and chemical communication between cells. So here you have the cytosol of one cell, here you have the cytosol of another cell, and here you have the respective membranes. So what you need here is some proteins that are aligned. Yeah, so this is a region where the proteins are aligned in the membrane, and this is going to produce a very small gap, yeah, that is going to have that is going to work as a pipeline or as a passage. So for example, if you have an ion here, yeah, and this is very important, small molecules of ions, you can move it from one to the other one. And when we study the action potential in the nervous system, we will see that this is very important. Without this, the electrical signals will not happen, and it will not happen so fast. In this slide, I just want to show you the structure of the gap junction. And here you have, again, the cell 1 and the cell 2. And I want that you see that these look like a flower. Yeah, each one of these flower is a connexon. Yeah, that is formed from connexin. Each one of these protein is a connexin, and it forms a hollow cylinder. Yeah, And through here is that through this gap is that they are able two ions to cross. So with this, we just finished talking about the 5 types of junctions that we will cover in this course. And I give you a very brief background about the function and the structure of each one of these junctions. Okay, so we finished our first section of the class. At this point, you should know what is a tissue. That is a collection of cells that, although there could be some diversity between the cells, as you can see here, all these cells work together to achieve one function. And you should know that there are 4 types of tissue in humans that we will study: epithelia, connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue. And you should know the function of each one of these tissues. In addition, you should know what is a cell junction, and remember that there are multi-complex proteins, that allow two cells to attach to each other. Now we're going to move into the second section of the class, that is the epithelial tissue.